I want you to take a look around your workspace right now. Chances are you've got something sitting right within arm's reach that you probably haven't given a second thought to since middle school. It's yellow, it's got a little pink eraser on the end, and it is entirely mundane. Or at least that's what you think. Because I promise you, the humble pencil is anything but a boring school supply. As we're going to see today, the history of this little wooden stick is actually a high-stakes economic thriller. We're talking international black markets, military secrets, and some seriously rampant industrial crime.
Okay, just think about this for a second. It's 1752. If you get caught stealing pencil lead, the British government doesn't just slap you on the wrist. No, they would literally banish you to the other side of the world. You were sentenced to transportation. Which begs the question, why? I mean, how does this simple writing tool spark that kind of draconian response and basically spawn a massive international black market? To really understand why graphite caused such extreme, rampant industrial crime, we have to go back to the very beginning.
So, the story starts in the year 1564, over in Cumbria, England. Picture this, a local shepherd is walking the rugged fells right after this massive, violent storm. A giant tree has been completely uprooted in the night, its roots ripped clean out of the hillside. And according to the local legend, right there in the mud beneath those roots, the shepherd finds something totally alien. It's black, it's strangely heavy, and weirdly enough, it doesn't burn. When he rubs it across his hand, it leaves this dark, clean mark. Now, he doesn't know it quite yet, but he has just stumbled upon a massive deposit of pure crystalline graphite. And within a single decade, this strange black dirt would become the most closely guarded substance in all of England.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing exactly why this discovery was so earth-shattering. You have to look at how people were actually writing at the time. Before graphite, if you wanted to draw or write something, it was an incredibly committal process. Scribes and master artists, guys like Leonardo da Vinci, they used a technique called silver point. Basically, they dragged a fine wire of lead or silver across specially prepared paper. The line was super faint, but more importantly, it was almost impossible to erase. You didn't just casually sketch, you committed to every single mark. But graphite? Graphite was a total revelation. It was way darker, you could sharpen it to a precise point, and miraculously, with just a little bit of effort, you could erase it. Wrap it in some string and boom, you have the world's first pencil. Suddenly, merchants, shepherds, and artists could actually make mistakes. It became instantly indispensable.
Naturally, Queen Elizabeth's advisors were not fools. They grasped the economic and strategic stakes of this immediately. They realized they were sitting on one of the most consequential discoveries of the century. So the crown swooped in. They heavily restricted access to the Borrowdale mine, only allowing it to be open and operate for a few weeks out of the entire year. And they did this intentionally, to keep the supply artificially scarce and drive prices sky high. In fact, this Borrowdale graphite, this black gold, actually became worth more per ounce than most precious metals.
But here is the thing about artificial scarcity. It didn't stop people from wanting to write. Instead, it birthed a highly lucrative black market. This right here was the birth of pencil-based industrial crime. Smugglers developed an entire sophisticated playbook just to get their hands on it. They were ruthlessly bribing the mine workers. They'd pack the stolen graphite into heavy lead-lined boxes so the authorities wouldn't notice the suspicious weight of the wagons. Then, this whole network of middlemen smuggled the precious cargo straight across the North Sea right into the waiting hands of desperate pencil makers over in Germany, France, and the Netherlands. The most powerful government in the world was literally losing a shadow war against people who just wanted a reliable way to write things down.
So the crown, obviously bleeding profits at this point, decides to tighten its grip even further. They pass a parliamentary act in 1752 that made stealing Borrowdale graphite a severe criminal offense. The law explicitly stated it was punishable by hard labor and punishable by transportation. Think about that for a second. We look at a standard yellow No-2 pencil today and just see a totally mundane object. But back then, the British government was literally stripping citizens of their freedom and shipping them across the globe just to protect their monopoly on pencil lead. But you know what? The profits were so extraordinary, the smuggling just kept happening anyway. Let's move over to Germany for a minute to see how this black market fueled an entirely new empire. Completely cut off from a legal, reliable supply of this world-class British graphite, the city of Nuremberg decided they had to improvise. German craftsmen started taking lower-grade, local graphite and blending it with sulfur, antimony, and resin. Now, it wasn't quite as good as the pure British stuff, but hey, it worked. And by 1662, Nuremberg had transformed itself into the absolute pencil capital of the world. We're talking thousands of workers, dozens of workshops, an entire booming economy built on a tiny stick of black powder. But here is the dirty little secret Nuremberg rarely advertised. This entire massive empire was fueled heavily by that smuggled British graphite Parliament was trying so desperately to stop.
Now, to really appreciate our next rogue protagonist, you have to understand just how tightly controlled this new German pencil economy was. Nuremberg operated under incredibly strict guild rules. Pencil making was legally split right down the middle between two very distinct guilds. On one side, you had the lead cutters, who exclusively shaped the graphite. On the other side, you had the carpenters, who exclusively enclosed that graphite in wood. Under strict penalty of law, crossover was strictly prohibited. You picked a lane and you stayed in it, period.
Enter Friedrich Statler. Statler was a local craftsman who looked at those rigid traditional guild rules and basically decided, yeah, those don't apply to me. He was a total maverick, operating entirely outside the legal guild system. He figured out how to do the entire process himself, from the raw smuggled material all the way to a finished wooden-cased pencil in one single continuous operation. As you can imagine, the guilds were furious. They fought him legally for years, constantly trying to shut down his rogue operation. But Statler, he just kept going, completely defying the law to build his brand. And if his name sounds familiar, well, that's because the name Statler is still stamped on millions of pens and pencils today. He literally built a global empire by breaking the rules.
All right, let's fast forward to the 1790s. The stakes are about to go from industrial crime to full-blown military crisis. Napoleon Bonaparte is at war with Britain. And remember, Britain controls the world's only known supply of high-quality graphite. So the British naturally enact a strict embargo, completely cutting France off from the supply. But the French army desperately needs pencils. They need them for drawing maps, engineering artillery, writing critical military correspondence from the front lines. You literally cannot run an empire without them. So how on earth does a French army get pencils during a total British embargo? Well, the French military turned to a man named Nicolas Jacques Conté. Conté was this brilliant, highly creative military scientist who boldly and somewhat alarmingly had already lost his left eye in a hydrogen gas explosion. The military basically orders him to solve the pencil crisis immediately. And amazingly, he pulls off an absolute miracle in exactly 6 days. He figured out that if you take really low-grade, widely available graphite, grind it into a fine powder, mix it with common clay, and then fire that mixture in a really hot kiln, the result is a solid rod that you can encase in wood and use to write perfectly. In less than a week, this guy invented the modern pencil core.
And here is the absolute craziest part of this whole thing. Conté's frantic wartime fix actually revolutionized writing forever. By simply tweaking the ratio of clay to graphite before firing it in the kiln, he discovered he could perfectly control the hardness and the darkness of the pencil. Put in more clay, you get a harder, lighter line. Put in more graphite, you get a softer, darker mark. Sound familiar? He accidentally invented the entire HB and HB pencil grading system we still use to this day. He patented the process in 1795. Now sure, brands like Faber-Castell eventually built massive corporate empires on this exact formula and became household names, but it was Nicolas Jacques Conté, a one-eyed scientist working under intense wartime pressure, who actually laid the foundation.
Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, America was dealing with its very own pencil drama. The United States actually had plenty of graphite, but there was a catch. It was impure and incredibly smudgy. Early American pencils were widely considered absolute garbage compared to their European counterparts. And for the longest time, nobody in the States could figure out how to fix it.
So who finally swoops in to solve this American problem? A famous philosopher, actually. Henry David Thoreau. Yep, before he went to live in the woods at Walden Pond, Thoreau worked in his father's pencil factory in Massachusetts. He spent time researching over at Harvard and ultimately landed on Kant's clay graphite formula, adapting it perfectly for that tricky New England graphite. His pencils instantly became the best in America. And then, having solved the puzzle, he promptly quit and went to the woods in 1845 to write. Following his innovation, the American pencil industry just exploded. Hyman Lipman soon patented the attached eraser, Joseph Dixon brought true mass-production industrial factories to the fold, and by 1873, the iconic Ticonderoga line, named after the Revolutionary War fort in upstate New York, was introduced. The pencil had finally found its modern home.
Actually, let's circle back to that eraser for a second, because it comes with a pretty staggering number attached to it: $100,000. See, for most of history, if you made a mistake with a pencil, you had to use a completely separate item to erase it. Most commonly, get this, a balled-up piece of stale bread. But in 1858, Hyman Lipman simply took a small piece of rubber and attached it right to the end of the wood. He patented it and later sold that patent for $100,000, which was an absolute fortune at the time. Sadly for the buyer, a stationer named Dreckendorfer, the US Supreme Court later invalidated the patent.
They ruled that just combining two existing objects wasn't a novel invention. Reckendorfer lost his entire investment, but hey, the eraser-tipped pencil was here to stay.
I mean, when you really step back, it's amazing to think about the sheer engineering packed into this little object today. Just consider this number, 45,000. Thanks to Nicolas Jacques Conté's 1795 kiln-fired formula, a single, average modern pencil holds enough perfectly calibrated graphite to draw a continuous line 35 miles long, or write approximately 45,000 words, all from a simple mixture of clay and black dirt.
And that engineering, it is scaled to an unimaginable degree today. Right now, 14 billion pencils are produced every single year. 14 billion. We have taken a resource that was once hoarded by royalty, heavily guarded by the British military, and smuggled across oceans by desperate criminals, and we have completely democratized it. It went from a priceless asset that could literally get you banished to a different continent to something you can buy a dozen of for just a few bucks.
So, the next time you pick up a number 2 pencil to jot down a grocery list or doodle in the margins of a notebook, I want you to remember what you're actually holding. You are holding the result of a centuries-long saga of industrial crime, rogue craftsmen, and brilliant military genius. Which leaves me with one final provocative question for you today. If a simple wooden pencil has a history this dark and thrilling, what other illicit histories are hiding inside the mundane, everyday objects sitting on your desk right now? Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll see you in the next explainer.